Hi and welcome to this video where I will be sharing my 2023 goals, excluding academic goals. I wanted to do this because whilst this is a channel very much dedicated to academia and navigating it or accessing it, there are so many other important things that help shape that experience and help keep you, I guess, managing through it. So I just wanted to share some of those goals on my channel. Just to introduce myself, my name is Éireann and this is The Student Journey, a channel dedicated to helping you navigate or access your own student journey, as well as sharing some aspects of my own. As you can probably tell, this video is on the latter. So in terms of goals, I write out my goals on Notion. I do just use a simple table where I insert some goals under different specific categories. The goals I have are divided into goals that can be very easily ticked off versus goals that are about being consistent and essentially taking on a new habit. Besides academic and career goals, which I will be excluding from this video, the categories I tend to have include health and fitness, financial, relationships, mindset, and I think that's everything, but I'm going to quickly check. Yes, that is everything. And essentially they are just an opportunity for me to think about those different aspects of my life, make some goals around them. Of course, a lot of people will have more. So for me, relationships encompasses kind of any social interaction. But I know a lot of people would split that out into family, friends, being social, etc. These were just the categories that made sense to me to very much clump things together. Similarly, I know a lot of people will have spiritual or religious goals kind of sectioned out, but again, for me, those kind of fit quite nicely into mindset. As I said, under each of these is goals that can be easily ticked off and achieved, well, not easily, but eventually ticked off and achieved, versus goals that are a bit more about consistency and kind of changing my behaviors and habits. So we'll start with health and fitness because I don't know why. I think it's just more in line with kind of traditional ideas of New Year's, but also something that I do prioritize quite a lot and have really enjoyed making progress in over the last few years. There will of course be some things that I leave out, and it's either because they're not a priority for me at this point or because they are already daily habits that I don't necessarily feel the need to kind of emphasize in setting my goals, otherwise the list would be never ending. But in terms of consistency for me, I really want to ensure I continue to go to the gym for a minimum of 4 times a week. I have a kind of powerlifting slash weightlift, it's not really weightlifting, but a kind of plan that I follow that splits up different kind of parts of my body that I want to work on each time I do go. I just want to continue being consistent with doing that. As I have said in a previous video, it really just helps me with my routine. The other thing I really wanted to prioritize and emphasize was eating fruit and veg every day. For some people that might be really simple, for some people that might be a goal they're nowhere near, but it's really something I want to push myself to do. I feel like on the whole my diet is in a good place, but I could always benefit from just getting more vitamins and whatnot. So under health and fitness, those are my 2 kind of consistent goals. The other things are things I would like to achieve by the end of the year. First and foremost, being able to compete at a powerlifting competition. That's something I'd really like to do. There's no real minimum criteria, but what I think is that by doing a powerlifting competition, it will, one, give me a chance to see what my personal bests are, so the kind of heaviest weight I can physically achieve in that specific move, but also it just gives me something to work towards. And the thing I would like to work towards, although it feels ridiculously ambitious, is if possible I would like my total lift or weight, I'm not exactly sure what the terminology is, but I'd like to be able to lift a total of 300 kilograms by the end of the year across those 3 key powerlifting moves. So that's bench press, deadlift and squat. How achievable this is, I really don't know. I could probably lift like 220 across all 3 at the moment, and that includes not having a very good knee after a roller skating incident, so my squats are pretty weak compared to what I feel I could achieve if I wasn't kind of recovering from an injury. So yeah, I would like, that's like a goal, 300 kg, probably 220 at the moment. So 80 kg is a lot to add, but it is February, so let's see. I don't know, I feel a bit weird sharing that. My final 2 fitness goals that I almost forgot to mention. The first one is around consistency, and it is essentially try to consume enough protein each day. I'm not really in the business of like measuring out food or anything like that, but I do know that I probably am not getting enough protein. I think that's probably the case for most people. So having protein supplements is something I'd like to continue to do on a regular basis. And the other thing, which is just a bit more fun, is continue to try out some different powerlifting plans. So yes, I have a plan that I have created and that I follow on a regular basis, but every now and then I would like to switch it up and try a completely different plan. This isn't a goal I wrote down, but I think while I'm here, it'd be really nice to share more of that stuff on YouTube or on social media. So I'll definitely think about that, or yeah, maybe push myself to do that a bit more. The next category is relationship goals, which, as I said, includes family, friends, and any kind of social things more generally. This isn't a kind of huge deal, and that's not because it's not something I don't care about, it's just something I don't feel is currently a problem that needs to be addressed. However, what I have kind of written down or scheduled as my goals include seeing a member of my family or a friend once a week. I think it's really important to see someone who you don't live with. Otherwise, it's really easy to spend time with your partner or spend time with your housemate and call it socializing, which it definitely is. But I want to make a more proactive priority to see people outside of there, or outside of what is essentially my regular schedule. I want to initiate more conversation. Since moving away from kind of where I grew up, I know I'm not necessarily as close to my friends physically as I have been in the past, and I just want to make sure that I am putting in the effort to sustain those relationships. So reaching out, initiating conversations, and checking in on people is another priority. And finally, something that isn't a huge deal but is important to me is I want to make the effort to support my friends a bit more vocally. I am introverted. I am really proud of my friends. I tell them that I support what I do, but I want to make the conscious effort to just be louder about my friends' achievements and share them kind of beyond a conversation with me and my friend. Like, I want to showcase them. As I said, I'm relatively introverted and not necessarily a big personality, but I do want to push myself to platform them, basically. That's it for relationships. As I said, it is relatively short, but that is because I do feel like I'm in a good place with those things anyway. I just want to make sure I continue to put the effort in and to push myself a bit more out of my comfort zone to show people that I care, that I'm thinking about them, that I'm proud of them, etc. Next is financial goals. Historically, I've always done quite well in terms of setting financial goals, but what is really different is I'm now no longer full-time employed. So I can't, or I don't necessarily feel like I have a consistent income enough to make big saving goals as I would if I were working full-time. So most of the goals I have made are more about reducing costs and keeping an eye on things like my budget. Just for context, I am a funded PhD student, so I get a tax-free stipend. On top of that, I do some work, so I have a very small monthly income for some work I do for the university, and I've also done a bit of freelance work. I don't necessarily factor in that freelance work because it is just so inconsistent, but it's something I am mindful of. So as I said, this is mostly about keeping costs low, and it feels very in line with the experience of many grad students. The first is just refrain from buying new things. That's something I've always been quite good at. I'm not necessarily a minimalist, but I'm not somebody who spends loads or makes impulsive purchases. I definitely was that person during my undergraduate degree, but since accumulating so much more as an adult who has to move around from time to time, I know the importance of kind of keeping an eye on how much you have and not just buying multiple items of the same thing. So continuing to kind of practice minimalism and refrain from any impulse buys or buying unnecessary things is goal number one under financial goals. The second is just to be a bit creative when it comes to saving money. So using apps like Olio, which aim to avoid food waste. At Cambridge, there is a great kind of Olio community, particularly around Pret-a-Manger. So I will just go and pick up free sandwiches and baguettes instead of having to buy a meal that evening. I don't necessarily do this as consistently as other people, but knowing I have that as an option, as well as other events where there may be free food, it's just a tiny way to kind of decrease how much you're spending. Finally, goal number 3 is just to look at the more affordable choices when I do buy things, whether that is clothing that I really need or food. Just thinking about essentially the budget range, going to places like Aldi, even if it means kind of planning ahead rather than resorting to convenience. I know that there are small kind of supermarkets nearby, but their prices are quite high because they know they get a lot of students going to them kind of last minute to pick up milk or whatever. The price of some really basic things is huge, so I just want to keep an eye on that stuff. I know I have a stipend that does mean I can afford to get by, but I just want to do a tiny bit every now and then to make sure I'm keeping my costs low, even if it means planning a bit ahead of time. That's it for financial goals. The final category I've called mindset, which encompasses a whole load of things from kind of habits to creativity to spirituality. I probably won't share absolutely every goal I have under there, but it's worth perceiving it as this kind of broad other that encompasses everything apart from the categories already listed or excluded from this. Number one under mindset is to have better focus at work or when I am working. This is something I really struggle with. I'm a huge multitasker. I tend to do multiple things at once or have multiple tabs open. I want to push myself to get into a state of flow and really just focus on the work at hand, because what I find is in trying to do 7 things at once, I don't really do anything effectively. So I do feel like if I could properly take this on and implement it, I would probably work way more efficiently than I currently do. Next is journal every day, whether that's in the morning or the evening. This is something I do on and off. Sometimes I'm really good at it and sometimes it just disappears completely. And the times it does disappear, it's because I tend to have like a morning meeting or something in the morning that pushes me to kind of finish up with my personal tasks quicker than usual. So I'm trying to push myself to do it before bed if I don't get a chance to do it in the morning, but it's just a really nice practice in terms of reflecting, manifesting, all of that good stuff. In a similar vein, I have a daily habit tracker, so there are tasks I'd like to do every day. I want to just continue doing that, holding myself to account and making sure I do those things. They tend to go really well together, and in looking at my habit tracker, I tend to be more likely to achieve them, again, because they fit into like a routine. The fourth thing is to share my writing more. This is something I am particularly nervous about, so I do keep a research journal, but what I find is I spend a lot of time kind of consuming information, reading, taking things in, but I am very, very hesitant to put my thoughts out there. I think if anything, this is probably one of the hardest goals I've set. So I'd really like to, one, get into a habit of writing frequently, but two, building my confidence to share my thoughts and my feelings about my work or about anything really. I think the reason I find this so difficult is because, one, I'm easily overwhelmed, but two, I recognize that, or I'm trying better to recognize that there is no right answer. I think my fear is that if I put my answer to a big social problem or academic problem out into the world, I'll be judged because, one, that may not be right, or two, I might not have thought it through completely. And I think there's perhaps this somewhat rational, somewhat irrational fear that I will be shunned for putting that perhaps not well thought through idea out into the world. Don't know if that makes sense, but I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about education, about social justice, about a number of issues, but because they are so extremely nuanced and I maybe struggle a bit with my writing, I'm quite scared to share them with the world, particularly because I think we don't necessarily recognize people as evolving and changing their views. So my fear is if I say something at some point in my life, I won't be allowed to ever change my mind. And actually comparing myself to myself at undergraduate level, I've definitely developed and evolved in my thinking about these issues. But to conclude that point, I want to write more, think more, and share those thoughts a bit more publicly than I have in the past. And my final goal under mindset is, I am already struggling with this, but I would like to spend 20 minutes every day on a hobby by myself. Yes, this is about developing a skill, working towards a goal, etc. But if anything, I think it's more about kind of prioritizing myself. I do a great job of focusing when I'm being assessed on it, or when someone's holding me to account, or I'm doing that thing socially. But if it is purely for myself and my enjoyment, it is the first thing to kind of be dismissed from my to-do list. So yes, this is about hobbies and enjoyment, but I really want to get into a place where I am comfortable prioritizing myself and I make time to do things that I enjoy, because with all these other priorities going on, it's really, really easy to let that slip, and to justify it because you don't necessarily see it as important as everything else. So that hobby could be anything. It could be musical, it could just be reading, but I want to do something that I perceive to not be productive, even though self-care is super productive. So that's, yeah, just a bit of a challenge to myself to prioritize me, prioritize my enjoyment, and try not to let myself down. So that's it for my 2023 goals, excluding academic and career goals, which I may put forward in another video once I've kind of worked that out in my head, but I'm sure there are other things that will pop up every now and then. As always, please do like, comment, subscribe, all of that good stuff. Feel free to share any goals you have, how you're getting on with them, and why it is you have prioritized that thing in particular.